All right, so we're going to get into our first review. So, The Sandman. You have a TV show now on Netflix, The Sandman, which is based off of Neil Gaiman's work, the comic book, which is very much kind of somewhat based in the DC universe. You even have some characters here from the DC universe, like who's played by David Thewlis, who plays John Dee, who's Dr. Destiny, who's a villain of the Justice League. But here it's kind of more self-contained story involving Dream, also known as Morpheus. Here, also known as the Sandman. He's got a lot of AKAs here going on. Got a lot of nicknames. But here you have that character here who, after being imprisoned by a mortal wizard, an asshole wizard, I should say, by Charles Dance, who people might know, he was
Who else?
With Tywin Lannister. People might know him from that in Game of Thrones. Here he is again playing another asshole father figure who wants to bring his dead son back and cast a spell to do so, bringing the personification of death. He's trying to get them, but accidentally messed up there. Said lunch instead of launch and got Dream, the personification there of Dream there. And he was in prison for 106 years. After breaking out, he has to set things back in order, his realm. A lot can happen over the 106 years that the personification of Dream has been missing. So you see a lot of him try to put things back in order throughout this 10-episode first season. Now, I've never read the comic myself. That's why I have Jordan here, who, like we said, is a big fan of it. And from what I understand, it is very close. It is very much of a one-in-one adaptation of the source material. Jordan, could you speak to that?
Yeah, nearly. There are some narrative changes. But the narrative changes actually help. It really does. Like, mainly the framing, because as you mentioned, yes. Charles Dance playing Roderick Burgess, aka the Magus. He and a colleague want to capture Death to bring back their sons who'd perished in World War One. They want to get Death, but they accidentally get Dream. But Dream in the comic was just minding his own business, taking care of the dreaming. In the show, he was trying to stop one of his nightmares that he created. The Corinthian, played very charmingly by Boyd Holbrook. And some of the other changes, they had to excise many of the DC connections, because in the comics, where John Dee, Dr. Destiny, was being held when his mother came to visit, was Arkham Asylum. There was direct references to the Justice League and Martian Manhunter. Now, this was before the Sandman comic went onto DC's much beloved and missed Vertigo imprint. In fact, the last 29 issues of the Sandman were published under the Vertigo imprint when that started. But yeah, what this season essentially adapted was the first two trades. Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes, and Volume 2, The Doll's House. So essentially you get about the first 20 or so issues.
Okay. It's very interesting.
But yeah, more or less, it is a pretty direct adaptation, aside from like little small narrative changes. Oh, I misspoke. The first 16 issues, more or less.
Okay. Very interesting. So that's very interesting to kind of know that knowledge of how closely it does kind of follow the source material. And you mentioned, you know what I mean, you have some small narrative changes. And I want to also get your opinion on some of the casting choices here, because you mentioned, some people might say that it's not that close to the source material because you got a lot of swapping going on here, got a lot of race swapping, got a lot of gender swapping, got a lot of people swapping,
Yeah.
show swapping, whatever swapping you kind of want to bring in there, swamp swapping. Kind of in this show, kind of going on here.
Yeah.
Most notably, you have Death here in the show, who was known as like a big goth icon, known for the pale
Oh,
skin and everything like that.
major manic pixie dream girl for a
Mm.
lot of nerds back then. Although I did like to joke, it's like, the Sandman is a perfect analogy for being trans because growing up, I wanted to be like Dream of the Endless, but then I realized I'd be better off being Deaf of the Endless.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
and Deaf here is played by Kirby Howell Baptiste, who fucking nails it.
mm. Yeah. And I've liked her when she was on. I just recently saw her on Barry. I've been binging that show, and she's on that. And she's very good on that. And she's also on The Good Place. She shows up like the last, I think, few seasons of that show. She's also very good on that as well.
Yes, and she was in season 4 of Veronica Mars.
Oh, okay. I gotta go watch that show again. I forgot about that. Yeah. Who she hears as Death, and they have a great episode, by the way. Like it feels like towards the middle of this season. I think it's kind of slow maybe in the beginning. I think maybe for the maybe first couple episodes, but I think towards the middle when it gets into like especially the 24/7 episode was episode 5 if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, and that was issue number 6 of the that's it. That episode essentially combines issues 6 and 7 because the confrontation between Morpheus and Dr. Destiny happens in issue 7, but the 24-hour diner stuff that majorly happens in the 6th issue, which was one of the first issues that really hooked me in. Like, The Sandman is a comic that did change my life because it was the first comic that really showed me there was more to it outside of the superhero genre.
Mm.
And I did read it mainly because of its connections to DC, but it's like it's so otherworldly, and it's also what introduced me to Neil Gaiman, and he became such a major influence on my own writing. Like my favorite written novel of all time is American Gods.
Mm. Yeah, which that show is on HBO too. They have another adaptation of his work. It's on HBO.
No, that
And
was on Stars.
oh, it was on Stars. Okay. I hear great things about it. I've been meaning to check it out. Is it very good, American Gods?
I mean, it's here. It starts off good.
Okay. Mm. That's
Yeah,
a shame.
but yeah, but yeah, and after that, like you bring up the 24-hour diner episode, like that is as horrifying as it was in the comics.
Yes. Yeah. That's an
It
amazing
was
episode.
like
Yeah.
it really is. It like it was one of the first scary comics I read.
Mm.
Like the Sandman eventually more becomes like fantasy like, but it still retains some of its horror. But that 24-hour diner, like that is one of the scariest, like the first scary comic I ever read, and it left an impact on me.
Mm. Yeah. And what happens in that episode? So you have a character who kind of shows up as a villain in this. Like I said, David Thewlis, who's John D. And when the Sandman was captured, different items of his were also taken, like his mask. He had that that kind of gas
His
mask that
helm.
looked his helm, and then also his ruby, which he uses as well as part of his power with the dreaming. And that kind of got passed down amongst the family that took him, and it got into the hands of David Thewlis. And with the kind of the what Ruby's able to do is kind of unleash the truths of people. So while he's in this diner, he's all about helping people be free by helping release their truth. And when you see that episode of like how it progressively just gets worse and worse and worse, it's like the tension of that episode is like, damn, it's like very good. Especially the performance by David Thewlis is amazing. Who people might know David Thewlis, he was Professor Lupin in the Harry Potter series. There's a lot of really great performances here. I mean, you mentioned Kirby, who plays Death, who's one of the Seven Endless as well. That's his sibling sister. You also see people like Desire and Despair, who also are part of the Endless, the seven kind of personifications there. What did you think about the lead Tom Sturges as Dream?
I loved him.
Okay.
This is one of my. This casting is perfect. Minus Patton Oswalt. I'll explain in a moment. But the casting, like, you gotta understand, the Sandman, for such a long time, there were rumors of an adaptation, be it TV or film. Although, honestly, you cannot do this as a movie. It is too dense. There's a reason there are annotated editions of the Sandman with all its literary references and such. So, I, I used to joke. It's like, I'll believe there is an adaptation of The Sandman when I see a trailer for it. Then I saw the trailer, and I can't do that joke anymore. So, that's out of my back pocket. But the casting, Tom Sturges is amazing. He really captured Morpheus. He really did. Like, he's someone that got disconnected from humanity and essentially is trying to reconnect and such. But just the casting is perfect across the board. From Tom Sturges, Jenna Coleman, Gwendolyn Christie, Boyd Holbrook, Kirby. Again, I say my only problem is Patton Oswalt. I love Patton Oswalt, but everyone just so captures their character and envelopes them, and they become that. Then you just have this talking raven that just sounds like Patton Oswalt. Kind of took me out a little bit.
Did you also feel the way about Marvin the Pumpkin, who's voiced by Mark Hamill?
No, honestly, I didn't feel that way. I mean, I knew ahead of time it was Mark Hamill, but honestly, it blended in just as nicely. It's just like, look, Mark Hamill was doing some afflections with his voice. He's being a little more gravelly. And so Patton Oswalt was just sounding like Patton Oswalt.
Yeah. And he seems like he's doing a little bit of more voice work these days, Patton Oswalt, because he was also MODOK in the Hulu series. I forgot there was something else that he was the voice of the Deep's Dick, wasn't he? And The Boys as well.
Yeah.
So he seems like he's doing a lot more voice work now these days. But usually when I hear his voice work, it's like because Patton Oswalt has a very distinctive voice already. So I guess
absolutely.
I guess it's like I'll just show up. I'll just do kind of Patton Oswalt stuff. Yeah, I could kind of see your
and
point.
Sometimes I don't.
Oh
yeah, sometimes I don't mind, but here it just like really took me out.
Yeah. Yeah. I can kind of see your point about the Raven, who's voiced by Patton Oswalt there, who's Matthew the Raven. I can kind of see your point there. Marvin the Pumpkin, who's voiced by Mark Hamill. It feels like sometimes, especially when you have an episode like the 24/7 episode in the diner, then you kind of go to this with the pumpkin and everything like that. It's like, I don't know if it all kind of maybe fits, but I think it doesn't really take me out too much of it. When you see Dream's world, where he's go to his realm of the dreaming, as they call it, you could kind of see the budget there, kind of, I think, because when they're standing there, you can kind of see the effect, like, okay, they're standing in front of a green screen. You can kind of see that a little bit there. But there are still some really well done shots. Like, I love the shot where you see Matthew the Raven, like, go through the painting. I thought that was a great transition. And when he ends up into the House of Rose, I thought that was really good. So they do some good effects stuff here that works really well. And what I also like about it is it really puts you into this world. It really drops you in there without, it does a great job of kind of setting up all these things where you meet characters like Lucifer, played by Gwen Christie, who is, looks amazing there. You know what I mean? Has the wings, and then the outfit looks really, really fantastic as Lucifer. Again, Hell doesn't really all look the best, you know what I mean, all that much, but I think it's effective enough. Then you have, oh yeah.
I gotta say, Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer Morningstar was one of my personal favorite highlights. I may have a predilection for taller women who could kill me, so that helped. But also, just her performance was so good. Like that fight, that totally unique fight where they just say, how, the concepts, of what they are. That was what it was in the comic, and I kind of fangirled a little bit, thinking it's like, oh my god, I'm actually seeing this happening. Because again, I just never thought this adaptation would ever happen, that it would get off the ground somehow.
Yeah, and I think it does a very good job at really, what I mean, explaining this world and everything that kind of goes into it. Especially when you have other characters like Joanna Constantine, who is a gender bent version of John Constantine, who people know from the DC Comics. And it's funny, it's going a little bit back to Lucifer. It's funny because there was conversation as bringing the guy who's Lucifer in the show, who used to be Lucifer in the show, back.
Tom Ellis.
Yeah, there was kind of conversation of that at first to bring him back. As the character, he's also appeared, like, I think he appeared in DC Legends of Tomorrow,
Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah, he appeared in the CW stuff.
Yeah, in the Arrowverse. I did enjoy the Lucifer show. I actually still need to see the final season, to be honest. But that was primarily based on Lucifer's own spin-off comic, which I did really like. But the Lucifer show was its own thing, and I enjoyed it as that. Although, like I said, I will say I'm glad they got Gwendolyn Christie, because if they had gotten Tom Ellis, it kind of would have taken me out just a little bit, because I wasn't sure if they'd be, because in the comics, it is very clear his visual model, his inspiration is that it's David Bowie. And I'm a big fan of that, because Bowie is God to me. He's my favorite musician of all time. But really, you gotta get someone else. And honestly, Gwendolyn Christie was a great fit. She was indeed devilishly charming in this role, and played so well off of Tom Sturges.
Yeah, and they have a great episode where they, fight each other, but it's not like a physical fight. It's like this, I don't know what to call, like a mental battle, I guess. Something like, I don't know how it is in the comic, but it's like in the show they.
Oh, it's exactly like that.
Okay, it's exactly like that. Okay,
yeah,
which I thought was very interesting. I thought that was kind of very interesting. But in that same vein, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, in that same vein of them trying to maybe get Tom Ellis to come back as Lucifer, there was also, I think, having the gender bent version of John Constantine, and you had the character like who's played him in numerous different things. Matt Ryan, I believe, is his name, the guy who also plays Constantine in the Arrowverse. Who I think, for a CW version of Constantine does a pretty good job. As a character, he's voiced the character in some DC animated stuff.
Yeah, and he had that criminally underrated solo series on NBC that got unjustly canceled
after one season, I think.
13 episodes straight.
Yeah. Here you have Jenna Coleman, who people might know. She was the companion in Doctor Who. Here as Joanna Constantine.
Clara.
How did you feel about her? as the character.
Well, I should say, given the comic and how this goes, Constantine, and she was an amazing highlight.
Mm.
She was incredible. I loved her. It's made very clear that she is a descendant of John Constantine, and really, she picked up all his bad traits. Like it is honestly a running joke in comics that there are two things you shouldn't do. It's one, sleep with Matt Murdock. Your life's gonna go to fucking hell. And two, don't be friends with John Constantine. You might literally go to hell.
Mm.
So, and her story is actually very much like John's was in the Sandman comics, although, albeit, more lesbian like, which I appreciate.
Mm.
So I really love Jenna Coleman. She really embodied the spirit of that character and completely made it her own. She really sunk her teeth into it and was a captivating presence anytime she was on screen.
Mm. For me with Jenna Coleman, I mean, first of all, she's very stylish. Like when she had her like white coat on and everything like that, I thought that was pretty great. I thought she was pretty stylish there. But Jenna Coleman has such a sweet face, and you know what I mean. And it's kind of like she's supposed to be this character. I think of when I think of Constantine or Constantine, however you want to say it, of being somebody that really is grizzled. Being this demon hunter, this demon kind of slayer. And it was, I don't think that her having that just type of look maybe worked all that much, but I still thought it was very different from what I've normally seen Jenna Coleman play, because I've seen her just basically play the companion, this kind of like naive kind of adventure traveler with kind of in Doctor Who. So it was a very different change of pace to have her here play Joanna Constantine, that I think was pretty good. And I still thought some of the elements were like you still see she's any Constantine is bad at relationships. You see, like that's just a constant thing that's going to just happen
That
over.
yeah that just has to be a hereditary gene in that fucking family.
Yeah, I mean, just you're just gonna be just destined to have fucked up
Well,
relationships.
yeah. Well,
Um, s-
that and chain smoking.
yeah, which she didn't smoke in this, did she? Or she just I
Not
think
that I recall, but it
yeah.
look. Yeah, look. There's gonna be look. If you're a Constantine, you're gonna have a hereditary compensation for shit relationships, alcohol addiction,
Mm,
chain smoking.
yeah.
You either get all of those or one of those habits.
Yeah. Yeah. So just pick your poison. Of where you're gonna have there if you're born.
And you
Yeah.
got no choice.
And seeing kind of also the different stuff in the dreaming world, like the librarian character who's Lucian. I liked their relationship. I liked the relationship that they had with Dream. I thought was pretty good. And you can see that there's a long history there. And Lucian, who also they are the one that kind of took control when Dream was off being in prison for all those 100 years,
Yeah.
and most people scattered, and they're like, oh well, I guess the guy's not coming back, or he's dead, or whatever. Like, okay, kind of I'm gonna go do my own thing. And she was the one really holding it down. And you kind of see now that he's back and trying to settle back into things, and you kind of see that relationship develop. I thought that was really good. um you know and with Rose Walker character, who's voiced by I mean, who's not voiced, who's performed by Vanessa Samuel. I hope I'm saying it right. I'm not.
That's Lucian.
Uh, no, Lucian is Vivian
Yeah.
Acampan. Yeah, and Rose.
Yeah, and that's about as good as I'm gonna do. And Kyle Ruh played Rose Walker.
Yeah. Cal. Yeah, played that Rose Walker. What did you think about Rose Walker in this? And is that a very similar kind of performance with the comic there?
Yes, because I was curious with how fast it was going through the first trade. It's like, what's the second half of this season gonna be? And well, it's in the doll's house. It leads up and ends with another one of those issues that sticks with me from the comics, the serial killers convention.
Mm. Yeah.
Which just like which both in the show and comic is given the nom de plume of being a serial convention. But
Mm.
they're they call themselves, oh, we are collectors, we are avid collectors. Oh, yeah, what do you collect? That's not important right now.
Mm.
So yeah, her story was always going to tie into the Corinthians because she is on the search for her missing brother, Jed, played here by Eddie Karananja. That's the best pronunciation I'm going to be able to do. But, and here they do change that up a bit with their backstory of foster parents and such. So,
Mm.
but it all ties into our antagonist of the series, the Corinthian, played by Boyd Holbrook, who is as charmingly horrifying as I imagined he would be.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. A very, very good performance by him. Also, he has something that really freaks me out with things like, he's got the teeth for eyes, that like teeth replacing certain body parts or things that really freaks me out. I do not like that at all.
Well, again, he's a representation of Morpheus's own hubris because he is a nightmare that Morpheus did create, and essentially, like, more so in the comics, he was just trying to be like, Am I making you proud, Daddy?" It gave very much big senpai notice me energy,
mm,
uh, to put it lightly. But here it's just like, ooh, I'm gonna play with all my new favorite things that I get to play with.
mm. Interesting. Um, is there any kind of like weak episode for you here in this 10 episodes or?
I'm trying to think. If I had to pick one, think I think it would be episode 7, which is titled "The Doll's House." I think that, like, I don't want to say it's the weakest. I'll just say it's like my least favorite episode.
Hmm. Okay.
But really, on the whole, it's I really did enjoy this series. It is a again, I never thought I would actually get an adaptation of the Sandman, much less an adaptation that was this good and faithful in many ways to the source material. It was really incredible what they had done. Like, the again, I can you can tell and feel how much love Neil Gaiman put into this. Although I did read, like, he wanted to have more involvement here than he did with American Gods, but a little less than what he did with Good Omens on Amazon. So finding a nice middle ground there, and I think and I think he found it perfectly because this show has his fingerprints all over it, but it is very much its own thing in a lot of ways.
Mm. Interesting. I hear Good Omens is pretty good. I hear that show's pretty good on Amazon. With Michael
Oh,
Shannon
it
and
is.
the
Oh,
antagonist.
that is a fantastic adaptation.
Mm. Okay, I have to check it out
But that
sometime.
was but that was him and Terry Pratchett
Mm.
that wrote that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, The Sandman, I really loved it. I will say one episode I did particularly like was Death's episode, which was The Sound of Her Wings, because it also leads to one of my favorite stories in the comics, which is how every 100 or so years, Morpheus will meet up with, excuse me, Hob Golding.
Mm. Yeah, and I love that episode too. The like every year met up with the person who they just allowed to live. They're like, I'll make a bet, let this person live, and they're going to be hating life by the end of it. And then that was a great episode to see how that episode, it kind of evolved with that character. I thought was very good.
Yeah, and that episode was a great adaptation of Dev's first appearance. Like like their scene in the park, and especially her speech about him being the most self-absorbed personification of a entity possible is like lifted right from the comics. But what I really did love was the montage of Morpheus just going along with her as she does her job and kind of just seeing the people's reaction to realizing, oh, do I know? Oh shit, you're
Mm.
deaf. And some of it's like beautifully melancholic. God damn it! Ah, I'm a writer. I should know words. Melancholic. You know what I'm getting at.
Mm.
Uh, so and like some of it's even heartbreaking. It's it's really wonderful. I really found this to be an enjoyable watch. It honestly makes me want to reread the comics, like all 75 issues. And I hope this gets more seasons because I would really love to see what they do with the next two books, Dream Country and especially Seasons of Mist, or Season of Mist.
So let's say Netflix doesn't fuck up and cancel it after a season. Um, how
Yeah,
long could this go on? Season.
I honestly, if you were to ask me before I even saw any of this, I would have thought they'll be lucky to get to the seventh trade. But now I'm thinking you can go all the way with this. You can probably get all 75 issues adapted here. And again, this was a 10 episode season, and they got through the first 16 issues.
Mm. Okay. So roughly what 5 seasons? It probably could get through all the material. Five, six seasons.
Probably.
Mm.
Or six.
Okay. Yeah. And you already stated your favorite episode was the episode with Death, and you loved the kind of the episode where he was the 100-year meeting episode as well. Um, yeah, I would say
Yeah.
those are some of my favorite episodes, as well as also as I talked about the diner episode. I love that episode. That really is a big standout for me. Um, and as yeah, I would love to see a second season with this show. Love the performances in this show. Tom Stewart, who's in a difficult position, being a character who is very stoic, but the times we kind of dry, but he does show kind of some little emotion that kind of glimmers through a little bit. I think makes
Yeah.
it even more special. And Boyd Holbrook, who did a good job as a Corinthian, I thought was really great as a villain character. Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of really great performances in here throughout. I think that really made this. And if they do a season 2, I would love to see more of Desire. I'd love to see more of that character. If they did.
Oh, Mason Alexander as Desire. So wonderful. And they are that very androgynous in the comic. In fact, like the Sandman comic was kind of like one of my first exposures to someone being gender non-conforming, transgender, gender fluid,
Mm.
uh genderqueer, non-binary. And in the comics they did uh they switch between like going between they them pronouns or its pronouns.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I heard about
Although
that.
since 2017, Neil Gaiman decided to say like, no, Desire's pronouns are definitely they them. But yeah, Mason Alexander, who is a who is a non-binary character themselves, knocked it out of the fucking park. I found them to be exceptionally wonderful, especially of how they played off Tom Sturgis, who, yes, I was honestly worried about the most because I thought you can cast so many good people in the other roles, but with Morpheus, you have to find someone stoic who can be a bit emotionless. But again, like I told you, it's about Morpheus losing his humanity by being captured and then slowly regaining his humanity, and he perfectly conveys that so well.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to see more of Desire that coming in. For some reason, the performance reminded me a lot of the villain from the Powerpuff Girls. What was that villain's name?
Yeah.
Him, yeah, very much reminded me a lot of that. For some, I was like, yeah, it reminds me a lot. Just the way he was moving, and everything like that. It just reminded me a lot of that. Yeah, I'd say recommend checking it out. Seems like people are really loving this, enjoying it. Fans, critics alike. Seems to be a crowd pleaser. So you want to give your final rating for it? Our rating system. So our highest is This Is Cinema. That's the highest you can give something. Then we have a tune in, tune out, skip it, burn it, and waste a fucking film is our lowest rating. So.
I will correct you. Desire goes by they them pronoun, so it'd be like
Right.
the way they moved around. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm gonna go right to This Is Cinema. It just fucking is. The production value is amazing. I never thought I would see the dreaming so perfectly rendered and realized, and it's one of the most captivating things I've seen all year. This is
Mm.
cinema. The performances, the casting, the writing, it's great. This is a wonderful adaptation. I would highly recommend to any fans of the Sandman comics that are hesitant, that are worried, don't be. Just plunge right in. It's worth it. It is exciting.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with that. I would go. Am I gonna go? This is cinema. I don't know. I'm thinking about whether the Sandman is like one of the better comic book properties I've seen on TV. Like stuff up there with like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Watchmen, Peacemaker,
I'd say
Invincible.
it's up there. It's not the best, but it's up there.
It is up there. I think it is up there. I think it definitely is up there. I would go with for now. I'll go with a strong tune in for me. I won't go this is
Fair,
cinema,
fair.
but I'll go strong tune in just for some minor issues and things like that. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very strong show. If you all want to check it out, highly recommend. If you still have Netflix, to you people who do, hey, you
Which,
got, what I
yeah.
mean, hey, you got something to watch on there. Got something to watch. All right, that was the Sandman.